The sky above the city was heavy with clouds, and the streets below were slick with hours of rain. Muddy water pooled in potholes and spilled over sidewalks, mixing with trash and leaves. Yet amidst this dreary scene, life moved fast. Cars honked impatiently, people rushed by, and no one stopped to look at the old man sitting quietly on a wooden bench near the corner of an aging convenience shop. His name was Papa Thomas. He wore a faded shirt with holes along the collar, loose trousers frayed at the edges, and rubber slippers that had clearly seen better days. His gray beard curled against his chest, and his eyes, calm and weathered, watched the world go by like someone who had once been part of it, but now merely observed from a distance. He swept the front of the shop each morning without payment. He didn't need the money. He didn't speak much. But every day, he sat there, unnoticed, unbothered, almost invisible, until the Range Rover came. It roared into the narrow street like it owned the place. Black, shiny, tinted windows, the kind of car that screams importance. As it raced through a large puddle in front of the shop, a violent splash of filthy water shot through the air and landed straight onto Papa Thomas. The world around him paused. A few people gasped. Some laughed uncomfortably. Others turned their heads. Papa Thomas didn't move. He blinked slowly as dirty water dripped from his face and beard. The Range Rover screeched to a brief stop, then reversed slightly. The window rolled down, revealing a young woman in designer sunglasses, perfectly done makeup, and a sneer that could slice steel. "You shouldn't be sitting so close to the road, old man," she barked. "This isn't your village." Without waiting for a reply, the window slid shut, and the car took off with a roar. Papa Thomas remained seated, wiping the water from his arms with a calm expression. The shopkeeper stepped out and handed him a towel. "That woman's always loud," he said quietly. Papa Thomas smiled faintly. "Let her be. God sees everything." That night, as Papa Thomas entered his actual home, a large, quiet mansion surrounded by a high fence, his slippers squished softly on the tile. Bernard, his son, looked up from the dining room table and froze. "Papa, what happened to you?" Bernard asked, standing quickly. "City blessings," Papa Thomas said, removing his shirt. Bernard shook his head. "You've got to stop going out like this. You don't have to play poor to understand people." "I'm not playing," Papa Thomas replied. "I'm testing." "Testing what?" "Testing hearts. I've seen enough eyes that smile at my wealth and spit at poverty." "You need a wife, Bernard, but not just any woman." Bernard sighed, sitting down again. "Papa, you've said this before, and I'll say it again until the right one comes. I've been seeing someone, Vanessa. Bring her tomorrow. Let me meet her properly." Bernard hesitated. "She's beautiful, confident, but she doesn't believe in giving. She says poor people are poor because they're lazy. I've seen her be rude to waiters." "Then we'll know soon enough," Papa Thomas said. "Let her come." The next morning, Papa Thomas returned to the street in his usual disguise. Same torn shirt, same plastic slippers. He sat beside the supermarket again. A cracked bowl lay in front of him, not for begging, but part of the illusion. It wasn't long before the same black Range Rover pulled up, the same loud bass, the same high heels clacking onto the pavement. Vanessa. She saw him instantly and laughed. "You again? Ugh! Why do you old men just refuse to disappear?" A few people turned to watch. "You stink," she hissed. "You're probably sitting here waiting for sympathy." Before anyone could stop her, she pulled out her phone and started recording. "This is what's wrong with this country," she said loudly, pointing the camera at him. "Lazy, dirty, and useless." Then came a voice from behind her. "Put that phone away." Everyone turned. It was a young woman with modest clothes and grocery bags in both hands. Her eyes flashed with anger. Her name was Mary. "You should be ashamed of yourself," Mary said. Vanessa spun. "Who are you?" "I'm someone with manners." "This man is a nuisance," Vanessa snapped. "He's sitting quietly. You splashed him yesterday. Today you're humiliating him." "You must be related to him," Vanessa sneered. "I'd be proud if I was." Vanessa scowled and stormed off. Mary turned to Papa Thomas. "Are you okay?" He nodded. "You didn't deserve that." "I know," he replied, smiling. "But it showed me who you are." They talked. Mary had studied agriculture. Jobless, she helped on her parents' small farm. "I believe in building things," she said. "Planting things, even dignity." He asked for her name. "Mary." "Thank you, Mary," he said, standing slowly. "You've watered something good today." Later that day, Bernard arrived home with Vanessa by his side. She wore a black dress, gold earrings, and carried herself like someone auditioning for a royal throne. Her perfume announced her presence before her heels hit the marble floor. Papa Thomas, now cleaned up and dressed in a simple white tunic, sat calmly in the courtyard, sipping warm tea. "Papa," Bernard called, "this is Vanessa." Vanessa extended a limp hand without much interest. "Pleasure." Papa Thomas took her hand gently. "Welcome." She looked around. "Nice house. A bit old, though. Needs remodeling." Bernard gave a nervous chuckle. "We like it simple." She shrugged. "Simple is fine, but elegance matters. My parents always said, appearances create respect." Papa Thomas raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. They sat. Vanessa talked endlessly about designer brands, holiday resorts, spa days, and her distaste for village behaviors. She spoke of poor people like they were contagious. "I don't understand," she said. "Why would someone choose to stay poor? If you're hungry, work. If you can't afford a car, take the bus and be quiet. Stop blaming the rich for everything." Bernard glanced at his father uncomfortably. Papa Thomas smiled softly. "And what if that poor person is doing his best, but the world never gave him a chance? Then he's probably not trying hard enough," she said flatly. "You make your own luck." Mary's words from earlier echoed in his mind. "You splashed him. You humiliated him." He took a deep breath. "Vanessa, there's someone I want you to meet." She blinked. "Who?" "You'll see." The next afternoon, Papa Thomas invited Mary to the house, under the guise of needing help with his garden. She came willingly, not realizing who he really was. When she stepped through the gates, her eyes widened in surprise. "Papa Thomas?" she asked. "This is your house?" He smiled. "Yes, and I'd like you to help me with something else too." Mary looked confused. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, Bernard walked in. He paused, shocked. "Mary? You two know each other?" Papa Thomas asked. "We met once at the library," Bernard said, still stunned. Mary nodded. "You're his son?" Bernard laughed. "Wow! Mary," Papa Thomas said, "you defended me when you thought I was a beggar. That wasn't just kindness. That was integrity. I've seen your heart." She blushed. "I only did what was right. And that's what makes you rare." Suddenly, the front door opened. Vanessa walked in. Her eyes locked onto Mary. "You? What are you doing here?" "I was invited," Mary said calmly. Vanessa laughed cruelly. "Invited? By who?" "The gardener." Bernard stepped forward. "By my father. She's our guest." Vanessa scoffed. "This joke again? You seriously think this market girl belongs in your house?" Mary swallowed hard but didn't move. "Enough," Papa Thomas said, rising slowly. "Vanessa, when you splashed me with mud, you had no idea who I was. When you humiliated me in public, you thought you were above me. And now, you stand in my home, insulting someone with more grace than your perfume will ever carry." Vanessa blinked. "Wait, what?" "I was that old man you called useless." Silence, a long, tense silence. Vanessa's eyes widened. Her mouth opened, but no words came. "I dressed like a beggar to see who would treat me with respect, even when I had nothing to offer," he said. "And you failed." Vanessa began stammering. "But I didn't know. And that's the problem," Papa Thomas said. "You only show respect when it benefits you." Bernard stepped beside his father. "I'm sorry, Vanessa, but this isn't the kind of woman I want in my life." Vanessa's expression twisted. "You'll regret this." She turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence lingered. Mary stood there, still shocked. "You pretended to be poor?" I didn't pretend," Papa Thomas said gently. "I returned to who I used to be. I was a street boy once. I swept shops, carried bags, and slept in churchyards. I built everything from nothing. And I wanted a woman for my son who could see people, not possessions." Tears welled in Mary's eyes. "I didn't know," she whispered. You knew the most important thing, Papa Thomas said. You knew how to be kind without expecting anything in return. Bernard stepped forward slowly. Mary, may I take you out for dinner? She hesitated, then smiled. Yes, I'd like that. As they left for the evening, Papa Thomas stood alone in the courtyard, watching the sky turn gold. He didn't need to test anyone else. He had seen all he needed. But the story was far from over, because somewhere across town, Vanessa wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Vanessa paced across the polished tiles of her luxury apartment, fuming. Her pride had been shredded, rejected, embarrassed, and humiliated by a man she thought was just an old beggar, and by Bernard, the man she believed was already hers. Her phone buzzed with incoming texts, but she ignored them all. How dare he? She spat, gripping her wine glass so hard her knuckles turned white. That girl? That dirty farm girl? He picked her over me? For someone like Vanessa, losing wasn't an option, especially not to someone with dusty shoes and no last name worth Googling. She wasn't going to accept defeat, not without a fight. She picked up her phone, dialed her cousin, an influential real estate developer, and said in a cold voice, I want you to find out everything about the Thomas family, especially the girl they replaced me with. Across town, Bernard and Mary had just returned from dinner. Their laughter echoed through the garden as they walked hand in hand, their connection light, easy, real. Mary's cheeks were glowing from the night breeze, and Bernard's warmth. Papa Thomas watched from the upstairs balcony, a soft smile curling on his lips. I never thought I'd see him smile like this, he whispered to himself. Thank God for timing. The following days were quiet but magical. Bernard took Mary to the farm where she had grown up. He met her parents, humble people with sun-kissed skin and hands that told stories of labor and love. They welcomed him without pretense, serving boiled yams and palm soup under the mango tree. Meanwhile, Mary came to know more about Bernard than any other woman had taken the time to learn. Not just the polished businessman, but the boy who once cried when he failed a school test. The young man who gave away his first bonus to a sick colleague. The one who still visited the orphanage every year on his birthday. Their connection deepened with every moment. But peace has a way of attracting envy. One evening, Bernard received a message from an unknown number. It contained photographs. Dark, grainy images of Mary speaking with a man near a bank ATM. The caption read, Your fiancé has a secret. Ask her who this is. He stared at the screen, stunned. The next morning, another message arrived. This time, a voice note. A woman whispering, She's not who you think she is. She's using you, just like she used others before. Bernard's hands trembled. Doubt slithered into his mind like smoke under a door. He didn't want to believe it, but the seed had been planted. When Mary arrived later that day with her usual soft smile, Bernard struggled to meet her gaze. Bernard? She asked. Is everything okay? Who is the man you were with yesterday? He asked directly. Mary blinked. Yesterday? Oh, Samuel. He's my cousin. He helped me withdraw some money my father sent from the village. Bernard hesitated. Why didn't you mention him before? She looked confused. Because it didn't seem important. He nodded slowly, but something had already shifted. That evening, he canceled dinner plans. The next morning, he didn't reply to her texts. By the third day, Mary could feel the silence louder than words. Meanwhile, Vanessa smiled as she watched Bernard spiral. Her cousin had done his job well. A few edited photos, a fake voice note, and one planted rumor. It was enough to poison even the strongest roots if done precisely. But Papa Thomas wasn't fooled. He'd seen storms before, and he recognized the fingerprints of pride and revenge when they touched his family. He visited Bernard's office unannounced. Son, he said, walking in without knocking, when someone tries to destroy what you've built, they'll always start with trust. Bernard looked up, guilt in his eyes. I didn't accuse her. I didn't know what to believe. Did you ask her with your heart or your fear? Bernard was silent. Papa Thomas sat beside him. You saw something real in her. Don't let a ghost in a text message steal that from you. Bernard lowered his head. What if I've already hurt her? Then it's time to apologize before someone else picks up the pieces you dropped. Later that night, Bernard arrived at Mary's small apartment. She opened the door slowly. Her eyes were puffy, her face bare of makeup, her strength clearly tested. "I got scared," Bernard admitted. "I let someone else's lies speak louder than your truth." Mary looked away. "I was wrong," he continued. "I forgot who you were. The woman who stood up for a stranger. The woman who never asked me for anything but honesty. I wanted to believe you'd never doubt me," she said softly. "I'll earn that belief back, day by day, word by word." She didn't say yes right away, but she didn't close the door either. And that was enough. From the shadows, Papa Thomas watched again. This time not in disguise, but fully present, fully proud. The test wasn't over, but love had just passed its first trial. A week passed. Bernard and Mary slowly began to rebuild what had been shaken. They walked again in the garden, laughed again under the same trees where their love first bloomed. But something had changed, not in their love, but in their awareness. They had learned how fragile trust could be, and how dangerous quiet enemies could become. Vanessa, however, was not done. She had one final card to play. With the help of a crooked lawyer and a few forged documents, she filed a civil case against Mary, claiming that Mary had stolen Bernard from her, exploited the Thomas family for wealth, and emotionally manipulated an elderly man into choosing her. The story hit the gossip blogs within hours. Billionaire son's fiancé exposed as gold digger. Farmer's daughter sued for love scam. Old man duped by pretty village girl. The media frenzy was brutal. Photos of Mary working on her farm, her parents' thatched house, and even grainy pictures of her with cousins were twisted to fit the story. Headlines screamed lies, comments were worse. Bernard's company issued a brief statement denying the claims, but the damage was done. Mary's phone buzzed nonstop. She shut it off. She stopped going to the market. Her mother wept when a neighbor mocked their family. Her father stood tall, but his hands shook while picking cassava from the field. The pain went beyond embarrassment. It became humiliation. Meanwhile, Vanessa made her next move. A televised interview. Dressed in white, with fake tears rolling down her cheeks, she looked into the camera and said, "I loved Bernard. I still do. But this girl came out of nowhere and tore us apart. I believe she used his father's kindness. I saw her charm him. It's a pattern. I just want the truth." The internet exploded with opinions. Half the audience believed her. The other half tore her apart. But none of that mattered, because the court summoned Mary to appear for a preliminary hearing. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the street. Cameras clicked. Murmurs flew. Mary walked in, dressed in simple white, with her dupatta draped carefully over her head. Her eyes stayed low. Beside her stood Bernard in a sharp black suit. His hand never left hers. Papa Thomas entered moments later, walking with the slow dignity of a man who had carried both wealth and wounds. Vanessa, sitting on the other side with her expensive lawyer, smirked as the judge entered. The hearing began. Vanessa's lawyer painted Mary as a manipulative seductress who had appeared just in time to steal affection and inheritance. He presented edited video clips, bank transfers taken out of context, and witnesses who claimed to have seen her flirting with older men. Then Mary was called to the stand. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. I did nothing wrong," she said quietly. "I helped an old man because it was the right thing to do. I fell in love because my heart told me it was safe. I never asked for wealth, and I never needed cameras to prove my kindness." The courtroom fell silent. Then something unexpected happened. Papa Thomas rose from his seat. "Your Honor," he said, "I request permission to speak." The judge nodded. "I am the man this case is centered around," he said. "I am the one who dressed as a beggar to find a heart worth trusting. And I'm telling this court today, I found it in Mary. Not in titles, not in appearances, but in how she stood up for someone she thought had nothing." He turned toward Vanessa. "As for you, young lady, you failed not just the test of kindness, but of character. You humiliated me because you could. You used my son because he had wealth. You sued a woman because she had what you never did, a heart." Gasps echoed through the room. The judge nodded. "Case dismissed. Ms. Vanessa, You are hereby warned against filing false claims in the future. Court is adjourned. The crowd erupted outside. Reporters ran after Mary, who refused to speak. She simply hugged her father and walked away with Bernard. But Vanessa stood frozen, not because she lost the case, but because she realized she had lost the story, and there was no way to get it back. That evening, Bernard knelt in the garden under the moonlight. "Mary," he said, holding her hand, "this world tried everything to ruin what we had, but we're still here. Will you marry me? Not to prove anything to the world, but to live the truth we already know?" She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes." The wedding took place beneath the oldest tree in Papa Thomas's ancestral garden, a tree that had stood tall through storms and sunlight for over 3 generations. It had witnessed births, funerals, and harvest festivals. Now, it would witness something that felt even more sacred. The union of 2 souls who found each other in the Sioux. There was no gold-studded stage or imported orchids, no flashing paparazzi or televised displays of luxury. Instead, there were paper lanterns glowing with soft light, marigold garlands wrapped around the tree's thick branches, and fresh mats rolled out over the earth, where guests could sit close, barefoot, grounded. Mary walked into the garden on the arm of her father, who wore his only formal shirt, starched and too tight at the sleeves, but proud nonetheless. She wore a modest ivory dress stitched by her own hands, decorated with tiny beads gifted by the orphan children she taught in the village. Her veil was lace, passed down from her mother's wedding. Her feet were bare. Bernard stood waiting under the tree, dressed in a navy blue sherwani with silver embroidery at the collar. His posture was regal, but his eyes brimmed with emotion. When Mary appeared, his breath caught. She glowed, not with wealth or makeup, but with grace, with truth. And beside them stood Papa Thomas, holding his wooden staff, dressed in a clean white robe. He didn't want to be announced as Chairman Thomas today. He wasn't there as a business tycoon or community leader. He stood as a father who had walked through pride, pain, and disguise to witness this very moment. As Mary reached Bernard, they held hands, and the crowd went silent. Papa Thomas began the blessing ceremony. "When I first met this woman," he said, eyes misting, "I had no name, no power, no title. Yet she treated me with the kindness most reserved for kings. That is why today she becomes part of our family, not because she passed some test, but because she reminded me what love really looks like." He turned to Bernard. "Son, you asked me once how I would know if someone truly deserved your heart. I told you, the right one would never make you choose between love and dignity. She would give you both." The guests clapped softly. Birds fluttered through the branches overhead, and the scent of fresh jasmine and rosewater floated through the warm afternoon air. Bernard looked at Mary. "I saw the world try to ruin us. I saw lies thrown at us like stones. But I also saw you stand, quietly, without begging or breaking. That's when I knew, if I had to start over with nothing, I'd still choose you." Mary blinked, her voice trembling. "I didn't fall in love with a rich man. I fell in love with a kind man. A man who saw more in me than status or strategy. A man willing to lose pride to find something real." And just like that, 2 garlands were exchanged. 2 hands sealed the moment. And a cheer rose, not loud, but warm. Not flashy, but full of meaning. Later that evening, the guests feasted on traditional dishes: coconut rice, fried plantains, groundnut soup, sweet mango pudding. Children ran through the fields with paper fans. Elders blessed the couple. Strangers who had once doubted Mary now toasted her with love. Bernard danced barefoot with Mary's nieces, while her father poured fresh juice for guests, and her mother showed off old photographs from Mary's childhood. Papa Thomas sat under the tree in a carved wooden chair, watching the scene unfold. But even in this piece, his eyes scanned the crowd, looking for the lesson the day would leave behind. Mary noticed his solitude and walked over, a soft cloth in hand. "It's getting cold," she said, gently draping it over his shoulders. "You didn't have to," he replied, smiling. "I wanted to." He looked at her carefully. "You didn't just marry my son today. You married this family's future." She sat beside him. You didn't have to forgive me after all the noise, all the lies. He shook his head. No, child, I didn't forgive you. I thanked you. For what? For being the mirror. You showed my son the man I hoped he'd become, and you reminded me of something this world forgets too often, that love, real love, doesn't scream or dress in gold. It whispers. It serves. And when tested, it remains. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the soft music in the background. A local band playing bamboo flutes, with drums beating like a heartbeat. Then, far away in the city, a hotel television showed wedding photos that had gone viral. Billionaire marries village girl who once saved his father. Thousands shared the story. Some scoffed, some cried. Some remembered the time they had once loved someone ordinary and let them go. Vanessa sat in the corner of a hotel lobby lounge, scrolling through the pictures alone. For the first time, she wasn't angry, just quiet. The comments beneath the photo called Mary the real queen, a symbol of humility, and the woman who broke the spell of gold. Vanessa set her phone down, no longer fighting, and back in the garden, under the warm light of hanging lanterns, Bernard leaned in and whispered something into Mary's ear. She smiled. They walked together toward the old house, hands intertwined. A year later, they welcomed a daughter. They named her Grace, because that's what saved them all.